The kitchen floor was cold. That was the first thing I registered, even before the pain. The cold seeped through the thin cotton of my nightgown, through the skin of my back, through the old, tired bones that had carried me through 72 years of life. It was a particular kind of cold. The kind that settled into your marrow and made you feel like you were already half in the grave. I had felt that cold before. I had felt it every winter of my marriage, when my husband, Robert, would turn down the thermostat to save money, and I would wake up shivering in the bed we shared. I had felt it when I sat in the bleachers at Mark's soccer games, the metal seats biting through my jeans, because Robert didn't believe in wasting money on stadium cushions. I had felt it the day Robert died, when the hospital room went quiet and the nurse drew the curtain, and I realized I was alone in the world, with a 16-year-old boy who looked at me like I was a stranger. But this cold was different. This cold was the floor of my own kitchen, the kitchen I had cooked thousands of meals in, the kitchen I had scrubbed and mopped and loved for over 40 years. The kitchen that wasn't really mine anymore. Not since I signed the deed over to Mark and Sheila. I opened my eyes. The fluorescent light above the sink was buzzing, a high-pitched whine that had been driving me crazy for weeks. I had asked Mark to change the bulb. He said he would. He never did. He was too busy, he said. Too busy with work. With the endless rate of minor crises that seemed to consume his life. I understood. I always understood. That was my problem. The ceiling was a pale, water-stained white. I stared at it, trying to piece together what had happened. I remembered getting up to get a glass of water. I remembered the dizziness, the sudden spinning of the room, the way the floor had risen up to meet me, before I could put out a hand to break my fall. I remembered the sharp crack of my head against the corner of the counter, the hot rush of something wet down the back of my neck. Now I was here, lying on the cold tile like a discarded doll. My left leg was bent at an odd angle. I tried to move it, and a bolt of pain shot through my hip, so bright and sharp that I gasped. I couldn't feel my foot. I tried to wiggle my toes, but nothing happened, just a dull, terrifying numbness. I called out. My voice was a thin croak, really audible over the buzzing light. I fell. I heard footsteps, heavy, unhurried footsteps. The creak of the floorboard in the hallway. The one that always squeaked, no matter how many times we tried to fix it. My son appeared in the kitchen doorway, his phone pressed to his ear. He was wearing his work clothes, a rumpled blue button, down and gray slacks. Even though it was almost 10 o'clock at night, he worked late most nights, he said. He was building a future. For me, for Sheila, for Amelia, for the family. He didn't rush to me. He stood there, looking down at me with an expression that was almost curious, like he was trying to identify a stain on the carpet. Yeah, I'll call you back, he said into the phone. He slipped it into his pocket and took a step closer. His eyes scanned me, taking in the blood on the floor, the awkward angle of my leg, the way my fingers were splayed against the tile, like I was trying to grip the world. Mum, what happened? His voice was flat, the voice of a man who was annoyed, not worried. I fell, I said. I was getting water. I felt dizzy. I think I hit my head. He crouched down beside me. He didn't touch me. He just studied me, his head tilted to one side. Mark had his father's eyes, a pale, unremarkable blue, and the same thin, unsmiling mouth. Robert had never smiled much either. He had said once, Ryan our marriage, that smiling was a waste of energy. He had said it in that matter-of-fact way of his, like he was explaining the merits of a good investment portfolio. I had smiled anyway. I had smiled for both of us. I had smiled through the sleepless nights, the cramped apartment, the years of scrimping and saving so Robert could start his business. I had smiled when the business failed and we lost everything. I had smiled when Robert found work at a rotary store, when he came home every night with sawdust in his hair and an empty look in his eyes. I had smiled for Mummer, because I wanted him to grow up thinking the world was a kind place. You're bleeding quite a bit, Mark said. He was still crouched beside me, still not touching me. I reached up with a trembling hand and touched the back of my head. My fingers came away red and sticky. The sight of the blood made my stomach lurch. I need an ambulance, I said. Please.
Call 911.
He pressed his lips together. It was a gesture I had seen 1,000 times. The same pursed mouth look Robert used to give me when I asked for something he didn't want to give. A new coat, a trip to the dentist, the weekend off from COO King. Mark had inherited that look, along with everything else. Don't call 911, he said. I blinked. The fluorescent light flickered, and for a moment, the room was bathed in darkness. Then the light came back, buzzing louder than before. What? I said, don't call 911 yet. He stood up, rubbing the back of his neck. It was a habit he'd had since childhood. A nervous gesture that I used to find end a ring. Now it just made me want to scream. Sheila's not here. She went to pick up Amelia from her friend's house. You know how Amelia gets with sirens. She'll have a panic attack. She's been so sensitive lately. Amelia, my granddaughter. The little girl who used to sit on my lap and let me read her picture books for hours. She was 11 now. She had her mother's sharp chin and her father's height. She barely spoke to me anymore, except to complain about dinner or ask for money. I gave it to her always. I gave her everything. Because that was what grandmothers did. That was what mothers did. We gave and we gave and we gave until there was nothing left. She's not here, I said slowly. She's not in the house. There's no one here to be scared, ARK. It's just you and me? He looked at his watch. It was a nice watch, a Rolex with a gleaming gold face. I had bought it for him for his 40th birthday. I had saved for months, eating canned soup and toast, skipping my own medications to save the co-pays. He had never thanked me. He had just put it on and said, "Nice," in the same flat voice he used for everything. "Let me think for a minute," he said. He started pacing, his shoes clicking on the tile. "If we call an ambulance, they'll take you to the emergency room. That's a lot of tests. A lot of paperwork. The insurance is a mess right now. Sheila handles the insurance." And she said, "Sheila handles the insurance. Mark, I have Medicare. I have the supplemental plan. I pay for it myself. You don't have to worry about my insurance." He laughed. It was a short, brittle sound. "Mum, you don't understand how any of this works. Sheila switched you to a cheaper plan last year. It's not as good, but it saves us a couple $100 a month. You signed the paperwork." I remembered. Sheila had come to me with a stack of forms, her smile bright and her voice soothing. "It's just a small change, Eleanor. Nothing to worry about. It'll save us money. We can use it for Amelia's school supplies. You want to help Amelia, don't you?" I had signed. I had signed because I always signed, because I trusted them. Because I believed that family was supposed to take care of each other, not exploit each other. "You switched my insurance without telling me?" I asked. My voice was trembling now, but not from the cold. From the beginning of something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Anger. Don't make a big deal out of it," Mark said. "It's just a different plan. You barely ever go to the doctor anyway. ARK. I'm lying on the floor with a head injury and a leg I can't feel. I need to go to the hospital." He looked down at my leg. The knee was bent inward. The foot turned at an odd angle. He didn't seem concerned. He seemed like he was calculating something. The cost, the hassle, the inconvenience. "It's probably just a bruise," he said. "Let me get a towel. We'll clean you up, and then we'll see how you feel. If it's still bothering you in the morning, we can go to urgent care. It's cheaper." He wanted to take me to urgent care, a place for sniffles and sprained ankles, not for 72-year-old women with numb legs and bleeding heads. I said, and this time my voice was louder, sharper, "I need an ambulance, now." He shook his head. "Mom, you're panicking. You hit your head. You're not thinking clear. Just give me a minute. I need to call Sheila. She'll know what to do." He walked out of the kitchen, pulling his phone out of his pocket. I heard him in the living room, his voice low and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone, placating, soothing. The same tone he used when Amelia threw a tantrum. I lay on the cold floor, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent light buzzed. The refrigerator hummed. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked, each tick a tiny hammer against my skull. I thought about the first time I gave something up for Mark. I had been 22, pregnant with him, working as a secret at a law firm. My boss, Mr. Henderson, had offered me a promotion, a junior bookkeeping position, more money, more responsibility. I had turned it down. I had turned it down because Robert said I should focus on the baby. "You don't need a career," he said. "You have me. You have the family." So I stayed home. I changed diapers. I cooked meals. I cleaned the house. I kept my smile on. I thought about the second time I gave something up. It was when Mark was 10. I had started taking night classes, trying to get my accounting certification. I was good at it, better than I had ever been at anything. But Mark was struggling in school, and Robert was working late, and there was no one to help with homework. So I dropped out. I dropped out so I could help Mark with his multiplication tables, so I could drive him to soccer practice, so I could be the kind of mother who was always there. I thought about the third time, and the fourth, and the 100th. Every time I gave up a piece of myself, I told myself it was for the family. I told myself it was love. But love wasn't supposed to feel like this. The cold was creeping up my spine, settling into my chest. My fingers were numb. My left leg was a dead weight. I tried to lift my head, but the room spun, and I let it fall back to the tile. I heard Arturaka's footsteps. He came back into the kitchen, his phone still in his hand. Sheila says we should wait, he said. Amelia's already in the car. They're on their way home. She doesn't want Amelia to see the ambulance. You know how she gets. Ark, I'm bleeding? He crouched down again, this time with a dish towel in his hand. It was the one with the embroidered roses on the border. I had embroidered those roses myself. Sitting in my rocker by the window while Robert watched the news. I had given it to Mark and Sheila as a housewarming gift. Sheila used it to wipe grease off the stove. He pressed the towel to the back of my head. I winced as the fabric touched the wound. Hold still, he said. It's not that deep. The bleeding's slowing down. See? You're fine. I wasn't fine. I was bleeding on the floor. And my son was holding a dish towel to my head and telling me I was fine. He was trying to make me believe that this was normal. That this was what love looked like. I thought about the bank accounts I had handed over. The savings I had put in their names, so they could buy a bigger house. The private school tuition for Amelia. I thought about the deed I had signed. The one that took my name off the house and put theirs on. I remembered Sheila's soothing voice. It's just a technicality, Eleanor. It'll make things easier for taxes. You trust us, don't you? I had trusted them. I had trusted them with everything I had. And they had taken it all. Mark said. You're shaking. You need to calm down. I looked at him. His face was tight, his jaw set. He was annoyed, not scared, not worried, not sorry, just annoyed. Annoyed that I had made a mess. Annoyed that I was being difficult. I made a decision. It was a quiet decision, the kind that happens in the back of your mind when you're too tired to think. Clea rely. But it was a decision nonetheless. I was not going to let them win. I was not going to let them grind me down to nothing. I had given them everything, and they had taken it all. And now they were leaving me on the floor to bleed. But I had one thing left. The one thing I had held back. The one thing I had never told them about. The safety deposit box. The one with my mother's jewelry and my father's old DOAR bonds and the records I had kept. The receipts, and the bank statements, and the emails, and the texts. The proof. I thought about my attorney. Susan. She had been telling me for years that I needed to take control of my finances. That I needed to stop giving everything away. I had ignored her. I had told myself I was being dramatic, but Susan had given me her card, and I had kept it in my wallet, underneath the faded pictures of Mark and Amelia. I'm going to put you on the couch, Mark said. Can you stand up? Don't move me, I said. You could make it worse. Mom, you're not a child. You're being dramatic. Just let me help you. He reached down and slid his arms under my shoulders. I screamed as the pain shot through my hip, but he didn't stop. He grunted, lifting me, and half dragged me into the living room. He laid me on the couch. A lumpy old thing that smelled like dog hair and stale popcorn. There, he said, pulling a blanket over me. That's better, isn't it? I'll check on you in a few hours. He walked away. I heard him go upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. I heard the distant murmur of the television. The living room was dark, lit only by the pale glow of the nightlight in the kitchen. The grandfather clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. I lay on the couch. Stay rang at the ceiling. And I let the anger wash over me. It was a cold anger, precise and sharp. It wasn't the hot, blind fury of my youth. It was something odder. Something that had been forged in years of quiet disappointment. I had let them take everything. My money, my house, my dignity, but I was done. I reached for my phone. My hand fumbled on the coffee table, knocking over a glass of water Mark had left for me. The water spilled across the table, dripping onto the floor, but I didn't see Ari. I found my phone. I pulled up Susan's number. I typed a message. I need help. Tonight. I pressed send. And then I waited. The phone buzzed within seconds. Susan's name Appy read on the screen. I answered it, pressing it close to my ear. Eleanor. Her voice was crisp and sharp. Even at this hour. What's wrong? I said. I fell in the kitchen, and Mark told me not to call 911. I'm on the couch. I think my hip is broken. I can't feel my leg. There was a pause. Then Susan's voice came back, low and furious. He did what? He said it was too expensive. He said he wanted to wait until morning. Eleanor, I need you to call 911 right now. And I need you to tell the operator exactly what happened. Do you hear me? Yes. And when the paramedics get there, I need you to tell them. Tell everyone. Tell the nurse. Tell the doctor. Tell the police if they come. Do not cover for him. Do you understand? I understood. For the first time in years, I understood that I had been covering for him my whole life, covering for his father, covering for everyone. I had been the cleaner of messes, the absorber of blame, the woman who always said, "It's fine," when it was anything but. I understand, I said. Good. I'm on my way. I'll meet you at the hospital. Yes, it's gonna be okay. I promise. You're not going to be alone anymore. I dialed 911. I gave the operator my address. I told her I was an elderly woman with a head injury and a broken hip. I told her my son had refused to call for help. I told her I was scared. And then I heard the sirens. They were faint at first, a distant wail in the night, but they grew louder, closer, like a promise being fulfilled. Upstairs, Mark's voice, thick with sleep. What the hell is that? I smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind I had never worn before. The sirens were the sound of my freedom, and I was not going to let anyone take it from me again. The ambulance doors swung open, and I was lifted into a world of bright lights and urgent voices. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, strapping me onto a gurney, checking my vitals, asking me questions I answered with a clarity that surprised even me. I gave them my name, my age, the date. I told them about the fall, the blood, the numbness in my leg. I told them about my son. He told you not to call us? The female paramedic asked, her voice briefly neutral. He said it was too expensive. I replied. He said to wait until morning. She exchanged a glance with her partner, a young man with a kind face and tired eyes. They didn't say anything, but I could see the judgment in their faces. They had seen this before. They had seen it 1,000 times, in 1,000 homes, where the elderly were treated like burdens instead of blessings. The ride to the hospital was a blur of jostling and sirens. I stared at the ceiling of the ambulance, watching the lights flicker, and I let myself feel the anger I had been suppressing for so long. It was a deep, ancient anger, the kind that had been simmering beneath the surface of my life for decades. I had been a good wife, a good mother, a good grandmother. I had given everything I had to the people I loved, and they had taken it all, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but this hollow shell lying on a gurney. At the hospital, I was whisked into a curtained bay, and a team of doctors and nurses descended on me. They cut off my nightgown, a faded pink thing that Sheila had bought for me at a discount store, and I felt a pang of loss. It was just a nightgown, but it had been mine. Everything I owned had been whittled down to nothing, and I hadn't even noticed it happening. Dr. Patel, a young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile, examined me with efficient hands. She asked me questions, checked my pupils, and ordered a CT scan. She told me my hip was fractured and I would need surgery. She told me I had a mild concussion, but no bleeding in the brain. She told me I was lucky. You're a tough woman, she said, patting my hand. You're going to be fine. I know, I said. I've survived worse. She didn't ask what I meant. She just smiled and moved on to the next patient. I was alone for a few minutes, staring at the flimsy curtain that separated me from the chaos of the ER. I could hear the sounds of the hospital, the beeping of monitors, the murmur of voices, the distant wail of another ambulance. It was a strange comfort, the anonymity of it all. Here, I was just another patient. Not a mother, not a grandmother, not a burden. Just a woman who had fallen and needed help. And then I heard a familiar voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the noise. Eleanor, where is she? Susan pushed through the curtain, her silver hair mussed, her briefcase clutched under her arm. She was still wearing the same rumpled blazer she'd had on when I called her earlier. She looked exhausted and furious, a combination that made her look like a force of nature. Eleanor, she said, pulling up a chair and sitting down heavily. You look terrible. Thank you, Susan. You always know the right thing to say. She laughed, a short, barking sound that was more relief than amusement. I got here as fast as I could. What happened? Tell me everything. I told her. I told her about the fall, the blood, the cold floor. I told her about Mark's refusal to call 911, his concern about the insurance, his casual dismissal of my pain. I told her about the years of small surrenders, the gradual erosion of my independence. I told her about the deed, the bank accounts, The power of attorney I had signed without reading. Susan listened without interrupting. She pulled a yellow legal pad out of her briefcase and took notes, her handwriting small and precise. When I was finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with eyes that held no pity, only determination. Eleanor, I'm going to be honest with you, she said. This is a mess. But it's a mess we can clean up. We need to get you out of that house. You can't go back there. It's not safe. Where would I go? I asked. I have nothing. They took everything. Susan smiled. It was a sharp, triumphant smile. That's where you're wrong. You have everything you need. You just don't know it yet. I've already contacted a friend of mine who runs a senior housing cooperative. They have a vacancy. It's a small apartment, clean and secure. You can move in as soon as you're discharged. I don't have any money, I said. They drained my accounts. They made illegal transfers. That's fraud. I've already filed a motion to freeze their assets. The courts will give you back what's yours. In the meantime, I'll front the cost of the apartment. You can pay me back when this is over. I opened my mouth to protest, but she held up a hand. Don't argue with me, Eleanor. Do you remember when we were in college, and I failed that statistics class? Yes. You tutored me every night for 2 weeks. I passed because of you. I became a lawyer because of you. You told me I could do anything. Now it's my turn to tell you the same thing. This is not charity. This is what friends do. I didn't argue. I was too tired, and underneath the exhaustion, there was a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Susan stayed with me until the nurses kicked her out. She gave me a hug before she left. A brief but fierce squeeze that made my eyes sting. Rest up, she said. Tomorrow, we start the WR. After she left, the nurses came to take me to my room. I was settled into a clean, quiet space, far from the chaos of the ER. The room had a window that looked out onto a parking lot, but I didn't see a ray. It was my room, my space. No one could take it from me. I drifted in and out of sleep, my mind churning with plans and possibilities. I thought about the safety deposit box, the one I had opened years ago without telling anyone. It held my mother's jewelry, a few pieces of silver, and a folder of documents I had kept out of a vague sense of caution. Bank statements, receipts, copies of every document I had signed. I had never known why I kept them. Now I understood. I had been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. The next morning, the sun was streaming through the window when I heard a familiar voice in the hallway. My hair clenched. It was Marquet. He came into the room with Sheila trailing behind him. Both of them wearing expressions of practiced concern. Sheila was holding a bouquet of cheap flowers, the kind you buy at a gas station, wrapped in crinkly plastic. RK was carrying a brown paper bag, probably filled with something from the hospital cafeteria. He said, his voice soft and apologetic. What came as soon as we heard. How are you feeling? I looked at him. I looked at his carefully constructed mask, the way his eyebrows were drawn together in a parody of worry. I looked at Sheila, her smile too bright, her eyes rotting around the room like she was appraising the furniture. I'm fine, I said flatly. We were so worried, Sheila said, setting the flowers on the bedside table. ARK told me what happened. I can't believe you fell. You really need to be more careful, Eleanor. I was being careful, I said. I was getting a glass of water. That's all. Mark read his throat. Mum, about last night. I know you were upset, and I know I handled things badly. I was just trying to protect you. The insurance is complicated, and I didn't want you to worry. I should have called 911. I made a mistake. He was apologizing. He was actually apologizing, in front of Sheila, with that hangdog expression he had worn since childhood. But I knew better. I could see it in his eyes. The calculation behind the contrition. He wasn't sorry. He was afraid. Afraid of the consequences. Afraid of what I might do. I decided to play along. For now, I forgive you, I said. I know you were trying to help. His face relaxed. Sheila's smile widened. They thought they had won. They thought I was the same old Eleanor, the woman who forgave everything, the woman who could be manipulated with a few kind words and a bouquet of gas station flowers. Mark said, we were so worried. You're going to come home as soon as they discharge you, right? We'll make sure you're comfortable. We can set up a bed in the living room, so you don't have to do the stairs. That won't be necessary, I said. I'm not coming back to the house. The room went quiet. Sheila's smile froze. Mark's face drained of color. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, I'm not coming back. I'm moving into a senior housing cooperative. It's a small appartement, but it's safe, and it's mine. RK stepped forward, his composure cracking. You can't do that. You can't afford it. We manage all the finances. You don't have any money? I'll have money, I said. As soon as the courts return what you and Sheila took from me. The color drained from Sheila's face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the deed, Sheila, the bank accounts, the power of attorney. I've filed a motion to have all of it reversed. My attorney is taking care of it. Mark's face contorted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You have an attorney? Since when? Since I realized that my family was robbing me blind. Sheila stepped forward, her voice shrill. You can't do this, Eleanor. We were taking care of you. Everything we did was for your own good. You're not capable of managing your own affairs anymore. You're senile. I'm not senile, I said, my voice cold and steady. I'm 72 years old, and I have a broken hip and a head injury, but my mind is sharp as a tack, and I remember everything. I remember signing those documents with a concussion. I remember you telling me it was just a formality, that it was for taxes. I remember you draining my accounts while I was in the hospital for that fainting spell last year. I remember all of it. Mark's face went pale. That's not how it happened. It's exactly how it happened. And I have proof. I had them. I could see it in their faces. The panic flickering behind their eyes. They had thought I was a pushover. They had thought I would go along with anything. They had underestimated me. Mum, we need to talk about this, Menarche said, his voice pleading. You're making a huge mistake. We're your family. We love you. No, I said. You loved my money. You loved my house. You loved the convenience of having a live-in babysitter and cook and housekeeper. But you never loved me, not really. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Sheila grabbed Mark's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. We should go, she said, her voice strained. She's not herself. She's confused. I'm not confused, I said. I'm clearer than I've been in years, and I want both of you to leave. Now, Mark opened his mouth to a rock, but I held up a hand. Leave, or I'll call security. They left. They didn't look back. The door swung shut behind them, and I was alone again. I lay back against the pillows, my heart pounding, my hands were shaking, but I wasn't scared. I was exhilarated. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I had refused to let them cross it. But I knew this wasn't over. They would be back. They would try to guilt me, manipulate me, threaten me. They wouldn't give up without a fight. I reached for my phone. I texted Susan. It's done, I told them. Her reply came within seconds. Good. The fight is just beginning. Get some rest. You'll need your strength. I smiled. The fight was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to fight back. I spent the next 3 days in the hospital, and I spent every waking moment planning. The surgery on my hip was successful, and the physical therapists had me up and walking with a walker by the second day. The pain was manageable, a dull ache that reminded me I was still alive, still fighting. Patel said I was recovering faster than she expected. I told her I had a lot to live for. Susan visited every afternoon, bringing me updates and legal documents. She had filed the motion to freeze Mark and Sheila's assets, and the court had granted it. They couldn't touch their bank accounts, couldn't sell the house, couldn't do anything with the money they had stolen from me. It was a small victory, but it tasted sweet. The court will schedule a hearing, Susan explained, flipping through her notes. They'll have to produce evidence that the transfers were legitimate. They won't be able to. You have documentation, and they don't. What about the deed? I asked. Can I get the house back? It's complicated, but yes. The deed was transferred under duress, and you have medical records showing you were in the hospital with a concussion when you signed it. That's a strong case for undue influence. I'll file a separate motion to have the transfer voided. I nodded, absorbing the information. It felt strange to be talking about legal maneuvers and court hearings. For so long I had been passive, letting things happen to me. Now I was taking control, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But I knew Mark and Sheila wouldn't give up easily. They had too much to lose. The house alone was worth over $500,000. They had used it as collateral for loans, had leveraged it to the hilt. If I took it back, they would be ruined. The day I was discharged, Susan came to pick me up. She had arranged for a taxi, but she insisted on riding with me to the apartment. The cooperative was in a quiet neighborhood. A low-rise building with a small garden in the front and a communal living room on the ground floor. My apartment was on the second floor, a compact studio with a kitchenette, a small bathroom, and a window that looked out onto a magnolia tree. It was perfect. It was mine. Susan helped me settle in, putting away the few belongings I had brought from the hospital. A social worker had retrieved a small bag from the house. Some clothes, the framed photograph of my parents that had been on my nightstand. I looked at the photograph, at my mother's gentle smile and my father's stern face, and I felt a pang of longing. They had been gone for so long, but I could still remember their voices, their laughter, the way they had loved me without condition. Thank you, Susan, I said, sitting down on the small sofa. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have found a way, she said, sitting down beside me. You're stronger than you know, Eleanor. You always have been, I smiled. I'm still rotting to believe that. She left a few hours later, promising to come back the next day with more documents. I spent the evening unpacking, arranging my small space, and thinking about what came next. The next morning, I got a call from the bank, a woman named Mrs. Delgado, the manager of the branch where I kept my safety deposit box. Risen, she said, her voice polite but slightly strained. I'm calling about your safety deposit box. There's been some activity. My hair tightened. What kind of activity? Your son came in yesterday, trying to access the box. He said you had given him authorization. He had a power of attorney document. I closed my eyes, my hand gripping the phone. He doesn't have authorization. That power of attorney is fraudulent. I revoked it. I assumed as much, said. I told him he couldn't access the box without a court order. He was... I can imagine. Did he say anything else? He threatened to sue the bank. I told him that was his right. But I wanted to let you know, Mrs. Ashe Ruzin. I thought you should be Ari. Thank you, I said. You did the right thing. I hung up, my hair pounding. So Mark was already trying to find a way around the freeze. He was desperate. Desperate people did desperate things. I called Susan and told her what had happened. She listened without interrupting, and when I was finished, she said, I'll send a formal notice to the bank, confirming that you've revoked the power of attorney. If he tries again, they'll call the police. What else can we do? I asked. What can get you an order of protection? He's already shown that he's willing to threaten and intimidate you. You'll need legal recourse. I said. I'm not taking any chances. But even as I said the words, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Mark wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. He had been raised to believe he could have anything he wanted, that the world would bend to his will. His father had been the same way, and I had spent my entire marriage catering to that belief. I had taught my son that he was special, that he deserved everything, that the people around him existed to serve him. I had created this monster, and now I had to destroy it. Later that day, I got another call. This time, it was my granddaughter. Grandma. Her voice was small, uncertain. I hadn't heard her use that tone in years. Amelia, I said, my heart aching. I'm okay. A pause. Mom and Dad are fighting, like, really fighting. Dad's been yelling a lot, and Mom's been crying. She said you're trying to take the house away. I took a deep breath. Amelia, I need to tell you something. Your parents have been taking advantage of me for a long time. They took my money, my house, everything I had. I'm just trying to get back what's mine. I don't understand, she said. You're my grandma. We're supposed to be a family. Family doesn't do what they did, I said gently. Family doesn't leave someone bleeding on the floor because they're worried about the insurance bill. Family doesn't steal from each other. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, and then she spoke again, her voice really above a whisper. Dad told me not to call you. He said you were confused, that you didn't know what you were doing. But I didn't believe him. I never believed him. My heart broke. Amelia, I'm so sorry you're caught in the middle of this. But I want you to know, no matter what happens, I love you. I will always love you. And I will always be your grandmother. I love you too, Grandma. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry for everything. For being mean to you. For not talking to you. I didn't know. It's not your fault, I said. You're just a kid. You were doing what you were taught. She sniffled. Can I come see you? I want to see your new apartment. I smiled, tears streaming down my face. Of course you can. I'll talk to your parents. We'll figure something out. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Mark and Sheila would never let Amelia visit me willingly. They would use her as a bargaining chip, a way to manipulate me into dropping the lawsuit. I had seen them do it before, when Mark's sister had tried to reconcile with me after years of estrangement. They had used Amelia then too, threatening to cut off contact if I didn't do what they wanted. I wasn't going to let them do it again. The next afternoon, Susan came to my apartment with a stack of papers. The order of protection is ready, she said. I've also filed the motion to void the deed and the illegal transfers. We have a hearing date in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I repeated, that's fast. The court is taking elder abuse cases seriously these days. They've seen too many of them. They want to send a message. I nodded, flipping through the documents. The legal language was dense, but I understood the gist of it. We were asking the court to declare the transfer of my assets invalid. We were asking for the return of my property. We were asking for damages. One more thing, Susan said, pulling out a small manila envelope. I had a private investigator look into your son's finances. I think you should see this? I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of bank statements. They were from an account I had never seen before, in a bank I had never heard of. The account was in Mark's name, but the transactions were all linked to a shell company. There were large deposits, then large withdrawals, all of them labeled as business expenses. He's been siphoning money out of your accounts, Susan said. He was using your money to invest in a business he never told you about. A business that failed, by the way. He lost everything. Took my money and lost it, I said, my voice hollow. He took your money and tried to triple it. He was gambling, Eleanor. He had a serious gambling problem, and he was using your savings to feed it. The room tilted slightly, and I had to sit down. I thought about all the years I had lived on canned soup and crackers, scrimping and saving to give Mark what he wanted. I thought about the Rolex I had bought him, the thousands of dollars I had handed over without question, and all the while, he had been throwing it away on risky bets and failed schemes. Does Sheila know? I asked. She had to. Her name is on some of these accounts. She was in on it. The betrayal felt fresh, a knife twisting in my gut. I had never liked Sheila, not really, but I had tried to love her for Mark's sake. I had given her the benefit of the doubt, assumed she was just a bit selfish, a bit materialistic. I had never imagined she was actively participating in stealing from me. I said, I want to take this all the way. I want a full investigation. I want them to pay for what they did. That's exactly what we're going to do, she said. But it's going to be a long fight. And it's not going to be pretty? I don't see a ray about pretty, I said. I care about justice, Susan smiled. That's the Eleanor I remember. She left, and I was alone with my thoughts. I looked at the bank statements, the evidence of my son's greed and deception. I felt a mix of anger and sorrow, a grief for the boy I had raised and the man he had become. But underneath it all, there was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number. He answered on the first ring. Mom, his voice was very uncertain. I said, my voice even. I have a copy of your bank statements. The ones from the shell company. The ones showing where my money really went. Silence. I could hear his breathing. Quick, he was panicking. Mom, I can explain. You can explain, I repeated. I doubt you can, but I'll give you one chance. You have one chance to tell me the truth. All of it. If you lie to me, if you try to weasel your way out of this, I will take you to the cleaners. I will make sure you lose everything. The house, the car, every penny you have. I'll make sure you're so deep in debt you'll never climb out. Mom, you don't understand? I understand perfectly, I said. You've been lying to me for years. You took my money, you took my house. You left me bleeding on the floor. And now I know you've been gambling with everything I gave you, so here's your chance. Tell me the truth, or I will destroy you. There was a long pause, and then Mark spoke, his voice shaking. I made some bad decisions, Mom. I was trying to make us rich. I was trying to give you the life you deserved. I got in over my head. I didn't know how to stop. Did you gamble with Amelia's college fund? I asked. Did you gamble with her future too? Another pause. It's complicated, I said. It's theft. It's fraud. It's everything I raised you not to be. And I'm done covering for you. I hung up. I stood by the window, looking out at the magnolia tree. The flowers were blooming, white and fragrant, a promise of spring. I thought about all the years I had given to that family, all the sacrifices I had made. And I thought about the future, the life I was going to build for myself. It was going to be hard, it was going to be messy, but I was going to win. Because for the first time in my life, I was fighting for myself. The days that followed were a blur of physical therapy, legal consultation, and quiet evenings alone in my small apartment. I was learning to walk again. The new hip a foreign object that reminded me of my fragility with every step. But I was also learning something else, the joy of solitude. For the first time in decades, I had no one to see okay for, no one to clean up after, no one to manage. I could eat when I was hungry, sleep when I was tired, and spend my days doing exactly what I wanted. It felt like freedom. And I was determined never to give it up again. Susan came by twice a week, bringing updates on the legal proceedings. The hearing was approaching, and she was confident we would win. The evidence was overwhelming. The bank statements, the signed documents, the medical records showing my concussion at the time I signed the power of attorney. Mark and Sheila had been served with the lawsuit, and their lawyer had filed a response, denying all allegations. Their defense is going to be that you were mentally incompetent, Susan said, flipping through the documents. They're going to claim you didn't understand what you were signing, that you were confused and easily influenced. That's rich coming from them, I said. They're the ones who confused me. I know. But it's the only defense they have. We'll need to show the court that you were competent at the time you signed those documents, and that they took advantage of your trust. I can do that. I remember everything, every conversation, every document, every smile and every lie. I remember it all. Susan smiled. Good. Then we have nothing to worry about. But I did have something to worry about. My granddaughter, Amelia. She had called me twice more, her voice increasingly anxious. She told me her PA rents were fighting constantly, that the house was filled with tension, that she felt like she was walking on eggshells. She told me she wanted to see me, but her mother wouldn't let her. Mom said you're trying to destroy our family, Amelia said during our last call. She said you're doing this because you hate us. I closed my eyes, the familiar RH of guilt spreading through my chest. Amelia, I don't hate you. I could never hate you. This isn't about you. It's about your PA rents and the choices they made. But what if they lose the house? She asked, her voice trembling. Where will we live? We'll figure it out, I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. I will always make sure you're safe, Amelia. No matter what happens. I meant it. But I also knew that the battle between me and her PA rents would leave scars that might never heal. It was the price of justice. And I was willing to pay it, but I wasn't sure Amelia was. 2 days before the hearing, I received an unexpected visitor. I was in my apartment, doing my physical therapy exercises, when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Mark standing in the hallway, his face pale and his eyes red-rimmed. He said, his voice harass. I need to talk to you. I had every instinct told me to close the door, to call Susan to protect myself. But there was something in his expression, something I hadn't seen in years. Guilt. Come in, I said, stepping aside. He walked into the apartment, his eyes scanning the small space. He looked out of place, too tall, too broad, too everything for the modest room. He sat down on the sofa, his hands clasped between his knees. This is nice, he said. Cozy, I said, sitting down across from him. It's mine. He flinched at the word, but he didn't argue. I came here to apologize. I know you might not believe me, but I am sorry. For everything. For the money, for the house, for what I did. I was wrong. And I let things get out of control. I watched him, searching for the lie. But his voice was steady, his eyes direct. He wasn't looking away. He wasn't deflecting. Why now? I asked. Why not before? Why did you wait until I called you out? Because I was scared, he said. I was scared of losing everything. And I was scared of you. You've always been the strong one, Mom. The one who held everything together. I was so busy trying to live up to your expectations that I forgot what they actually were. Mark, I never asked you to be perfect. I just wanted you to be honest. I just wanted you to love me. I do love you, he said, his voice cracking. That's what makes this so hard. I do love you. And I still screwed everything up. Tears were streaming down his face. I had seen Mark cry only twice in his adult life. Once at his father's funeral. And once when his first girlfriend broke up with him. This was different. This was something deeper. What about Sheila? I asked. Is she in on it? He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I had my answer. She knew, he said finally. She didn't stare at it, but she knew. And she didn't stop it. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I sat back, my heart heavy. I had known the truth. But hearing him say it out loud made it real. Sheila had been a willing accomplice. She had looked me in the eye, smiled her fake smile, and taken everything I had. I said, I want you to understand something. I'm not going to stop this. I'm not going to drop the lawsuit. You and Sheila are going to have to face the consequences of what you did. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I know. I figured you'd say that. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And I want to make it right, if I can. Make it right how? I'll give it all back, he said. The house, the money, everything. I'll sign over whatever you want. Just don't destroy our family, Mom. Amelia doesn't deserve that. Amelia is the only reason I'm not doing worse, I said. She's the only reason I'm not going to the police and filing criminal charges. RK flinched. You wouldn't, I said. But I'm not, because I love her. And I don't want her to see her father in handcuffs. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home, and you're going to tell Sheila that the lawsuit is going forward. You're going to cooperate fully, hand over every document, and accept whatever judgment the court gives. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to be a better father to that girl. Those are my terms, I said. Take them or leave them. He sat there, staring at the floor. His shoulders were slumped, his face a mask of defeat, and for a moment, I felt sorry for him. He had been raised in a world where he thought he was entitled to everything. It wasn't entirely his fault, but it was his responsibility. I'll do it, he said finally. I'll tell Sheila. I'll do whatever you want. Good, I said. He stood up, walking toward the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. Mom, he said without turning around. I just want you to know, I'm proud of you, for standing up for yourself. I never thought you had it in you. Neither did I said. He left. The hearing was held in a small courtroom, filled with the kind of quiet tension that precedes a storm. I sat next to Susan, my hands folded on the table in front of me. Across the aisle, Mark and Sheila sat with their lawyer, a slick man with a silver smile and eyes that rotted everywhere. The judge was a woman in her 50s, with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. She looked at the documents, listened to the arguments, and asked pointed questions. Susan presented the evidence methodically, walking the judge through the paper trail, the medical records, the timeline of events. Sheila testified first, her voice shrill and defensive. She claimed I had been confused, that I had signed the documents willingly, that she and Mark had only been trying to help. But Susan cross-examined her with surgical precision, poking holes in her story, exposing the inconsistencies. You're telling me that Mrs. H. Rosen, a retired bookkeeper with 40 years of experience, didn't understand what she was signing? Susan asked. She was getting older, Sheila said. She wasn't as sharp as she used to be. Did you ever take her to a doctor to confirm that diagnosis? It wasn't a diagnosis, it was just obvious. Was it obvious when she cooked dinner every night? When she cleaned your house? When she took care of your daughter? Sheila faltered. That's different. Susan pressed. Eshe Risson was competent enough to cook and clean, but not competent enough to manage her own finances. Is that your testimony? Sheila's face flushed, but she didn't answer. Mark testified, and I watched him ruefully. He told the truth, more or less. He admitted that I had signed the documents without fully understanding them. He admitted that the transfers were made without my explicit consent. He admitted that he and Sheila had taken advantage of my trust. Thank you, Susan said when he was finished. That's all, Your Honor. The judge looked at the documents. Mrs. Risson, do you have anything to add? I stood up, my legs shaky but steady. I had been practicing this moment for weeks. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I began, my voice strong. I spent my entire life taking care of my family. I gave up my career, my dreams, my independence, because I believed that was what a wife and mother was supposed to do. I trusted my son and his wife with everything I had, and they took it from me. Not because they thought I couldn't manage it, but because they wanted it for themselves. I looked at Mark, then at Sheila. I stood up for them 1,000 times, and they never once stood up for me. But I'm done standing up for people who only see me as a resource. I'm done being invisible. I'm done being taken for granted. I'm asking this court to give me back what's mine, so I can live the rest of my life on my own terms. There was silence in the courtroom. I sat down, my hands trembling. The judge looked at me, a flicker of something in her eyes. Respect, perhaps. I will issue my ruling tomorrow morning, she said. Court is adjourned. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, looking at the magnolia tree through the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. I had done everything I could. Now all I could do was wait. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Amelia. Grandma, are you okay? I hey art about the here ring. I typed back. I'm okay. Sweetie art, everything is going to be fine. I promise. She replied, I love you. I smiled through my tears. I love you too. And I meant it. No matter what happened, no matter how the ruling went, I would always love her. The next morning, I received a call from Susan. Her voice was triumphant. Eleanor, we won. The judge ruled in your favor. The deed is voided. The transfers are reversed. They have to give you back everything. I sat down, my legs weak. Everything? Everything. The house, the bank accounts, the investments. It's all yours again. And the court is ordering them to pay your legal fees. I couldn't speak. I was crying, silent tears streaming down my face. Susan asked, are you okay? Yes, I said. I'm more than okay. I'm free. I hung up and looked around my small apartment. It was quiet, simple mine. I had lost so much over the years, but now I had everything I needed. I walked to the window, looking out at the magnolia tree. The flowers were in full bloom, their petals white and luminous in the morning light. I smiled. It was the beginning of my new life, and I wasn't going to waste a single moment of it. The morning of the closing, I woke before the sun. The apartment was quiet, the way I had grown to love it, and I lay in bed for a few extra minutes, listening to the birds outside my window. The magnolia tree was in full bloom, its petals soft and white against the pale sky. I had watched it change over the weeks, from tight green buds to the explosion of spring, and I realized it was the first time I had truly paid attention to something beautiful in years. I dressed with care, not in the faded, shapeless clothes I had worn for too long, but in a crisp linen blouse and tailored trousers I had bought with my first withdrawal from my newly restored account. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a woman I really recognized. She stood taller, her eyes were clear. Her mouth was set in a firm line that was not quite a smile, but was something close to satisfaction. I had the house back. The deed had been officially transferred, the court order executed, and Mark and Sheila had vacated the premises 3 days ago. I had not watched them leave. I had not wanted to see their faces, to hear their excuses. Susan had handled the logistics, and I had stayed in my apartment, waiting for the moment I could walk through my front door again. That moment was now. Susan picked me up in her car, a sensible sedan that smelled like coffee and old paper. She was wearing a bright red blazer, the kind of bold, unapologetic color I had never read to wear. Ready? She asked. I've been ready my whole life, I said. The drive was short, but it felt like a journey across time. I watched the streets pass by, the familiar landmarks that had faded into the background of my daily existence. The corner store where I used to buy Mark candy when he was a child, the park where I had pushed Amelia on the swings, the church where Robert and I had been a ride, its steeple still standing tall despite the years. And then we turned onto my street. My street. The houses were the same as they had always been, modest colonials with neat lawns and the occasional garden gnome. But they looked different to me now, brighter, sharper, as if I was seeing them for the first time. We pulled into the driveway. The house stood before me, a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters. I had painted those shutters myself, 20 years ago. Standing on a rickety ladder while Robert held it steady. He had grumbled about the cost, about the waste of a weekend, but I had done it anyway. I had wanted the house to look nice. I had wanted to be proud of it. Now it looked tired. The paint was peeling, the gutters sagging, the front porch, where I had once spent countless afternoons sipping lemonade and watching the world go by, was cluttered with forgotten toys and dead potted plants. The house had been neglected, just like me. Susan rocked and turned to me. Do you want me to come in with you? No, I said. I need to do this alone. She nodded, her eyes kind. Take your time. I'll be right here. I got out of the car and walked up the front path. The stones were uneven, the same stones I had tripped over 100 times. I remembered the day I had tripped and spilled a tray of cookies I had baked for a neighborhood gathering. Sheila had laughed. She had said, Eleanor, you're so clumsy. I had laughed too, because I had thought it was better to laugh than to cry. I reached the front door. It was unlocked. The key was in my pocket, but I didn't need it. The door swung open, and I stepped inside. The house smelled musty, closed up for too long, The living room was empty, stripped of the furniture Mark and Sheila had taken. The carpet was stained, the walls scuffed, but it was still my house. I could feel it in the walls, in the creak of the floorboard rods, in the way the light fell through the windows. I walked through the rooms slowly, letting the memories wash over me. The kitchen where I had cooked Thanksgiving dinners for 30 people. The dining room where Robert and I had celebrated our anniversaries, always with a bottle of cheap wine and a store-bought cake. The hallway where I had measured Mark's height on the doorframe, marking the inches in pencil. I found the marks faded but still visible, and I traced them with my finger. I walked upstairs. The bedrooms were empty. The closets the one I had shared with Robert for 40 years, was still intact. The bed was gone, but the wallpaper remained. A faded floral pattern I had picked out when we first moved in. I had loved that wallpaper. I had spent hours choosing it, weighing the options, trying to find something that would make the room feel warm and welcoming. I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall, and I let myself feel it all. The anger, the sadness, the relief, the hope. It was a whirlwind of emotion, and I didn't try to contain it. I let it flow through me, leaving me emptied and whole at the same time. After a while, I stood up and walked to the closet. The floorboard under the shoe rack was loose, just as I remembered. I knelt down, pried it up with my fingers, and reached inside. The safety deposit box key was still there, exactly where I had hidden it. I had never told anyone about it. Not Mark, not Sheila, not even Susan. It had been my secret, my insurance policy, my last shred of control. I held the key in my palm, feeling its weight. It was a small thing, but it had changed everything. The documents in that safety deposit box had been my weapon, my shield, my proof of the truth. I slipped the key into my pocket and walked back downstairs. Susan was waiting on the porch, her silhouette framed by the morning sun. She looked up as I came out, her face questioning. Well, she asked. I said, really mine. She smiled. Good. Now what are you going to do with it? I looked at the house, at the peeling paint and the sagging gutters, and I smiled. I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to make it beautiful again. And then I'm going to live in it, on my terms, for as long as I want. That sounds like a plan, Susan said. We stood there for a moment, two old friends in the morning light, and then I heard a sound, faint at first, but growing louder. A seer. I looked down the street and saw a familiar sedan pulling up to the curb. Amelia got out of the car. She was wearing a hoodie and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked older than I remembered, her face more serious, her eyes more garroted. She walked toward me slowly, her hands shoved in her pockets. Behind her, Mark climbed out of the driver's seat, his face pale and uncertain. He didn't approach. He stayed by the car. Watching, I said, my voice catching. You came. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes scanning the house, the porch. My face. Mom said you were going to fix it up, she said. She said you might sell it? I'm not selling it, I said. This is my home. I'm staying. She nodded, her expression unreadable. And then she stepped forward and threw her arms around me. I held her tight, feeling her shake against me. Grandma, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Don't apologize, I said. You have nothing to be sorry for. She pulled back, her eyes glistening. Can I come see you sometimes? Can I help you fix it up? I smiled, tears streaming down my face. Of course you can. I'd love that. She smiled too, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years. We stood there, grandmother and granddaughter, in front of the house that had seen so much sorrow and now held so much hope. Mark was still by the car, watching. I walked down the path toward him, my steps steady. He looked at me, and I saw the fear in his eyes. He said, I know you don't want to see me. I just wanted to bring Amelia. She wanted to see you. It's fine, I said. You were right to bring her. He nodded, relief flickering across his face. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I looked at Susan, who was standing on the porch, her arms crossed. She gave me a small nod, telling me it was my choice. "'Kay," I said. "Walk with me." We walked to the backyard, the place where I had once planted a small garden. The garden was overgrown now, choked with weeds and wildflowers. But the magnolia tree, the one Robert and I had planted on our first anniversary, was still standing. It was taller now, its branches reaching toward the sky, its leaves a vibrant, healthy green. "I planted that tree 40 years ago," I said. "It was just a sapling. Robert didn't think it would survive. He said it was too small, too fragile." RK looked at the tree, at its sturdy trunk and broad canopy. He was wrong. He was wrong about a lot of things, I said. But I didn't know it then. I let him be wrong. I let everyone be wrong. I thought it was easier to go along with things than to fight. I took advantage of that, RK said. I took advantage of you. I'm not gonna make excuses. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, not because I got caught, because I let you down. I looked at him, at the son I had raised, the man he had become. He was not a monster. He was a flawed human being, a man who had made terrible choices. But he was still my son, RK. I said, I forgive you. His eyes widened. I forgive you, I repeated. Not because you deserve it. Because I don't want to see a ride that weight anymore. I've seen a ride too much for too long. It's time to put it down. He read at me, his mouth open, and then he rotted to cry. Not the silent Raza before, but loud, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. I didn't hold him. I didn't comfort him. I just stood there, letting him cry. When he was done, he wiped his eyes and looked at me. What now? He asked. No, you go home, I said. You build a new life. You earn back the trust you lost. And you do better, I will. He said. Don't make promises, I said. Just do the work. He nodded. And we walked back to the front of the house. Amelia was sitting on the porch steps, talking to Susan. She stood up when she saw us, her eyes rotting between us. Are we leaving? She asked. Yes, RK said, but we'll come back. If that's okay with you, Mom. It's okay, I said. Amelia hugged me again, and I watched them drive away. RK's car disappeared around the corner. And I was alone with Susan and the house and the magnolia tree. Well, Susan said, that was unexpected. Not really, I said. I've been thinking about it for weeks. I realized I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be bitter. I just want to be free. She nodded. So what now? I looked at the house. It needed work. It needed love, but it was mine. And I was ready to give it everything I had. I'm going to plant another tree, I said, in the backyard. Something that will grow tall and strong. Something that will remind me of this moment. What kind of tree? I smiled, thinking of the magnolia, of the years of silence and sorrow, of the day I had finally spoken up. I said. They bend, but they don't break. And they always come back, no matter how hard the winter. Susan laughed, a warm, genuine sound. That's perfect. I walked back into the house, and I left the door open. The morning light streamed in, chasing away the shadows. It was time to begin.